So today we come together, we celebrate Easter. And with today's message, a lot of times we hear an Easter message and it's focused on the cross. We think about what Jesus endured for us, and it's a time to commemorate that. And I think even people can draw into some guilt of like the mistakes that I've made, and drawing in like that somehow that's related to the cross and Jesus suffering. Where today I'm not going to focus on that. I'm going to focus more on the relational side of what was happening and the real part that is victorious for us, and that is the resurrection of Jesus. So I'd like to start with John chapter 20, beginning in verse 1, and just read through what this experience looked like as the disciples were learning of the fact that Jesus was no longer in the tomb. So John chapter 20, verse 1, very early Sunday morning, before sunrise, Mary Magdalene made her way to the tomb. And when she arrived, she discovered that the stone that sealed the entrance to the tomb was moved away. So she went running as fast as she could to go tell Peter and the other disciple, the one Jesus loved. That's John, of course, he's writing this. She told them, "They've taken the Lord's body from the tomb, and we don't know where it is, where he is." Then Peter and the other disciple jumped up and ran to the tomb to go see for themselves. They started out together, but the other disciple outran Peter and reached the tomb first. I love the quotes on that. He didn't enter the tomb, but peeked in and saw only the linen cloths laying there. Then Peter came behind him and went right into the tomb. Bold Peter walks right in. He too noticed the linen cloths lying there, but the burial cloth that had been on Jesus' head had been rolled up and placed separate from the other cloths. Something happened, and they see the evidence. Then, verse 8, the other disciple who had reached the tomb first went in, and after one look, he believed. Now, just a minute. This is the account of the disciple John, who was with Jesus, and it says that when he walked in, he believed. Now, they haven't seen him yet, but they heard the story that he would resurrect. And John is saying he walked in and he believed. And then verse 9, for until then they hadn't understood the scriptures that prophesied he was destined to rise from the dead. Puzzled, Peter and the other disciple then left and went back to their homes. Okay, so they were moved by it. They don't know quite what to think. They went back home. Mary arrived back at the tomb, broken and sobbing. So this Mary Magdalene, who knows Jesus so well, she, if you look at what we know of Mary from the scriptures, she was a devout follower of Jesus. Jesus was her teacher, was her leader. She had built her life around following Jesus for this period of time. She was delivered from many demons. She was really in a place of close connection with Jesus, and her Jesus wasn't here anymore. And that's a really, really hard thing. So think about, just for one moment, what kind of grieving she had. Now, we're not talking like there's some lost relative that you don't really know that has passed. This is her life. And I can feel like the level of grieving. If you have seen someone who has lost their child and they're in that deep intensity of grieving, if you've seen someone who is grieving the loss of a very close personal friend, it's an entirely different experience. And I feel that Mary was that person, and how close she was with Jesus. It's like she says in verse 11, she arrived back at the tomb, broken and sobbing. She stooped to peer inside, and through her tears, she saw two angels. Now, at this moment, you see Mary is in this deep, intense grieving. She longs just to be close with Jesus. And that's the whole reason to be at the tomb in the first place, right? Is that you go there to grieve. You go there for closure. But I believe for Mary, it was something more than that. She just wanted to be near to Jesus. There's something when it's your life, like Jesus is her life. And the fact is, now that she's gone back there, after seeing that the clothes are like, there's no Jesus in that tomb, she goes back there and she sees these the angels, right? So Mary arrived back at the tomb, broken and sobbing. She stooped to peer inside, and through her tears, she saw two angels in dazzling white robes sitting where Jesus' body had been, one at the head, one at the feet. "Dear woman, why are you crying?" they asked. And obviously, it's very clear why she was crying. Mary answered, "They have taken away my Lord, and I don't know where they've laid him." Now, just for a minute, think about how that impacted Mary, because it's like, not only did Jesus die, but somebody had the gumption to go in and steal his body away and take away the Lord that I want connection with. I'm here to connect with him. And his body isn't here. But see, it's deeper than that. See, Mary says that they've taken him away. And then she turned around to leave. And there was Jesus standing in front of her, but she didn't realize it was him. He said to her, "Dear woman, why are you crying? Who are you looking for?" Mary answered, thinking it was only the gardener, "Sir, if you have taken his body somewhere else, tell me, and I will go." And Mary, Jesus interrupted her. Turning to face him, she said, "Rabboni," Aramaic for my teacher. And imagine what that was for Mary to experience that. You see, it's the lowest level of grieving and loss next to the highest level of rejoicing, all in the same minute. She is looking at her Jesus. And you see that those tears were ones of loss, that she had lost that connection of the one she knew. And now in this moment, it all changed because there is a resurrected Jesus. And see, the thing was, as we're going to read next, you see, he did it a little bit out of time. He hadn't even completed the work yet. This wasn't really part of the plan, but out of relationship and her sobbing, he chooses to connect with Mary before he's ascended. Now let's read on. Verse 17, Jesus cautioned her, "Mary, don't hold on to me now, for I haven't yet ascended to God my Father. And he's not only my Father and God, but now he's your father and your God. Now go to my brothers and tell them I've told you, and that I'm ascending to my father, to your father, to my God and your God. Then Mary Magdalene left to inform the disciples of her encounter with Jesus. I have seen the Lord, she told them, and she gave them his message. So think about the beauty of this, that out of all of the apostles, out of all of those that have known him, it's Mary who is waiting at the tomb, who was grieving, who was choosing connection with him that day. And she's the one that Jesus chose to connect with. And I just think it's very, very deep. And it's like my heart is moved to think of this exact moment in time. Like it's more than just these words on a page that we're reading this story. Like I feel her heart on what was happening, that it's like, Jesus, you said you would resurrect, but I saw your body laid in that tomb. And I fear that somebody took your body away. But in that same moment, as she was turning to leave, it all changed. First the angels, then Jesus himself. And on the lines of Jesus himself, I'm reminded of a book called Jesus Himself. It's written by Andrew Murray, and this was at the turn of the century, late 1800s, early 1900s. He wrote a book about how people had encountered Jesus, but didn't know it. And in this case, Mary encountered him as the gardener, thinking it was just the gardener, because she wasn't looking for him. And there's something about, where are we looking for Jesus? Are we tuned in to really see him? I'd like to turn to the book of Luke, and beginning here, chapter 24, beginning in verse 13. You see, this miraculous appearance of Jesus to Mary was the beginning of them to see him. And yet, as the apostles were walking on the road to Emmaus, they also encounter him. I'd like to read here verse 13 and onward. Later that Sunday, two of Jesus' disciples were walking from Jerusalem to Emmaus, a journey of about 17 miles. It's not just a little walk. They're gonna be hitting their goals on the Fitbit this day. They were in the midst of a discussion of all the events of the last few days when Jesus walked up and accompanied them in their journey. They were unaware that it was Jesus walking alongside them, for God prevented them from recognizing him. Jesus said to them, "You seem to be in a deep discussion about something. What are you talking about, so sad and gloomy?" Do you see a pattern here? That it's like, why are you crying? Why are you sad and gloomy? Like, Jesus is actually playful in his resurrection. Do you see that? It's like, these are his best friends. And he really loves them. He really, really loves them. It's like, it's really hard to even read it, because it's like, to be there. You seem to be in a deep discussion about something. Why are you so sad and gloomy? They stopped, and the one named Cleopas answered, "Haven't you heard? Are you the only one in Jerusalem unaware of the things that have happened over the last few days?" Basically, this is a big deal. This is a big day. Like, if you don't know, like, there's something really big that just happened in Jerusalem, and you should have been here to see it. And then Jesus asked, "What things?" Again, look at Jesus again, like, so playful. He wants them to say it. Like, to declare the things that just happened, and then to bring the truth of the matter to the table, the truth of his resurrection. And it's going to change everything. That sad and gloomy countenance that these men have is all going to change in just a moment. It's really big. All right, so what things, Jesus asks, right? The things about Jesus, the man from Nazareth, they replied. He was a mighty prophet of God who performed miracles and wonders. His words were powerful and he had great favor with God and the people. But 3 days ago, the high priest and rulers of the people sentenced him to death and had him crucified. We all hoped he was the one who would redeem and rescue Israel. Early this morning, some of the women informed us something amazing. They said they went to the tomb and found it empty. They claimed 2 angels appeared and told them that Jesus is now alive. Some of us went to see for ourselves and found the tomb exactly like the women said, but no one has seen him. Jesus said to them, "Why are you so thick-headed? Why do you find it so hard to believe every word the prophets have spoken? Wasn't it necessary for Christ the Messiah to experience all these sufferings and then afterward to enter his glory?" And then he carefully unveiled to them the revelation of himself throughout the scripture. He started from the beginning and explained the writings of Moses and all the prophets, showing how they all wrote of him and revealed the truth about himself. And then they approached the village. Jesus walked on ahead, telling them he was going on to a distant place. They urged him to remain there and pleaded, "Stay with us, it'll be dark soon." So Jesus went with them into the village. Joining them at the table for supper, he took bread and blessed it and broke it and gave it to them all at once. This is at the breaking of bread. This is at the time of fellowship. All at once. Just think about this. What that experience is for these disciples. All at once, their eyes were open and they realized it was Jesus. And then suddenly, in a flash, Jesus vanished before their eyes. Like, this is a really big moment, guys. And I think we think about the time of Easter and like the suffering of Jesus, but really it was suffering with a purpose that he could have encounters with us as his risen self. Like, these first encounters are really what change history. All of history changed because those prophecies about Jesus resurrecting were true. And Jesus is actually calling them out, guys, why were you so thick-headed and you didn't believe that the resurrection would actually happen? And yet he was kind enough to walk them through it. He literally walked them through it. He walked them through the scriptures. He walked with them on this road for, what was that, 17 miles? It was not a Sabbath day. They wouldn't walk that far. It's so amazing how he takes that time to walk, but look at the reaction. We'll look at their response after they realize what just happened. Just a second here. So then suddenly in a flash, Jesus vanished before their eyes after they realized it's him. Stunned, they looked at each other and said, "Why didn't we recognize it was him? Why didn't our hearts burn with the flames of holy passion when we walked beside him? He unveiled for us such profound revelation from the scriptures." Now, here's the thing. This is beautiful. Jesus was giving them the gospel message through all of the scriptures that they could hold on to it. He gave it to them at this most vulnerable moment of their lives when they were still believing that Jesus himself was not yet resurrected. They were holding on to hope, but they just had to see it for themselves. And I feel that like this is really the groundwork and the foundation of all of Christianity is on the fact that Jesus is resurrected. So today, we don't sit here and hold ourselves so accountable. Like, God, I messed up so bad, and I have all these sins that I'm holding on to. And that, Jesus, I need you because of the depth of these sins. You see, that's not the place that we focus. We put focus on the sins themselves, and now the sins have power. You see, instead, we put our focus on the resurrected Jesus who is walking with us, whether we recognize him or not. He is there with us as the resurrected Jesus. And how many times are we gloomy and sad in our circumstances, that we're walking through something and we don't realize that the resurrected Jesus is walking right with us, and that the power, the testimony of his love, the testimony of the gospel of peace is with us. And see, that is where Resurrection Sunday, Easter Sunday, has its power. And I know, like, this is a deeply emotional topic for me because of my Jesus, because I see these people who walk closely with him, and I connect with their hearts as they connected with him that day. And so as we go into breakouts, I have a few questions for us to ponder. And Andrew, if you'd like to put those questions up. So now we have all these Easter traditions. We have a lot of like what Easter means to us. I like to start with number one. What does Easter mean to you personally? So, just take a little bit of time in your group to talk about that. And what has it meant? And is there a way even to make Easter more of a celebration of his resurrection? Now, is there a way to do that, right? I know that's not one of the questions, but question number two. Have you been in a place what feels like a devastating loss and then refreshed by the presence of Jesus? Like, and if you want to, if you feel open to doing so, just to talk with those in your group about that time and how you met the presence of Jesus in the midst of a devastating loss, and how things really began to turn around for you in that moment. Because really, being in the presence of Jesus really changes everything. It really, really does. A lot of things can be going wrong, but if you're with Jesus, I tell you what, it's going to turn around for the good. And then question three, how can we apply the resurrection to our everyday lives? So maybe it is something like we found ourselves walking down a road, having a conversation with people, and then we realize, actually, the resurrected Jesus is with me as I'm walking this thing out. So if you would, please, talk amongst yourselves in our breakouts, and, really and enjoy a fresh perspective on Easter this year, a fresh perspective that focuses on his resurrection, what he means to us. So, are we ready to go to breakouts?
I need you to buy me 1 minute, because with Steve leaving, it kind of made me need to rearrange.
Okay. Gotcha.
I'm going to combine it and do one less room.
Okay. That's fine. No problem.
All right. Yeah.